Unity is imperative in America.
Polarization in some ways is more common than us coming together.
We didn't just become divided. We let hate into our hearts.
You want to know why Trump is durable in the Republican imagination? The Republican establishment is still making nice and doing shoulder massages with the people who are using unity as a club. And Trump's like, I'm just not going to play that game. Joe Biden is praising George W. Bush for the unity speech, but he's really praising him because he believes that George W. Bush is attacking people purportedly of the right, but never anybody on the left. Right? This is what unity means to people of Joe Biden's ilk. Unity means we are right and you are wrong and you shut up. And if you disagree, there's no unity. That's what Joe Biden means. And I don't take seriously that Joe Biden is particularly upset about January 6th because January 6th is worse in kind than the riots we saw that wrecked the cities across the summer and have led to a radically exacerbated murder rate in every major city in America. I just don't believe that he even believes that. I think that he believes that people who agree with his agenda are basically good and people who disagree with his agenda are basically bad. That is not a unifying perspective. Kamala Harris is doing the same thing. Right? You are granting, this is why I'm very frustrated with George W. Bush's speech, not because of the critique of 1-6, but because of the inability to know and understand that radicalism on all sides of all aisles is a major, major problem. When you only critique one side of the aisle and then you say that unity is in the offing, you are incorrect. All you are doing is granting favor to people who have actively promoted the disunity. If you're not willing to condemn all of the bad things, you're only willing to condemn some of the bad things, you're fomenting others of the bad things. The left knows this, which is why they were using Bush's speech over the weekend. Here's Kamala Harris doing the same thing, calling for unity. This is absolutely galling stuff coming from Kamala Harris. I mean, it's here she is calling for unity.
Unity is imperative in America. It is essential to our shared prosperity, to our national security, and to our standing in the world. And by unity, I don't mean uniformity. We had differences of opinion in 2001, as we do in 2021. And I believe that in America, our diversity is our strength.
She's a liar. When she says that she doesn't believe that unity is uniformity, no, she 100% does. She does not believe in diversity of opinion in any serious way. You can look at her legislative record on this. It is pretty clear. This is not a person who deeply cares about diversity of opinion. This is a person who's part of an administration that is attacking other Americans for diversity of opinion. You get the same thing from the media. You got Jim Acosta doing the same thing. What happened to our unity? What happened?
We didn't just become divided. We let hate into our hearts for each other. There was an expression used after 9/11. All gave some gave all. We don't really do that anymore. Some of us don't want to give anything at all. We live in separate worlds now. We don't agree on the same facts anymore. We can't even agree on wearing masks or getting vaccinated to end this pandemic.
Why isn't there unity? Because of you people who won't mask after being vaccinated. Yeah, I wonder why there's not unity. George W. Bush calls for unity, and in the process of calling for unity, he basically name checks the 1-6 rioters, but nothing else, right? That is where he's putting his sole focus, which is inherently ununifying because it turns out that there are a lot of threads in the fabric of America that are being torn asunder, many of them by the leadership of the United States, which George W. Bush has studiously ignored as long as it is coming from the left since 2008. And this is coming from somebody who voted for George W. I wasn't old enough to vote in 2000. I voted for George W. Bush in 2004 and supported much of his agenda. It is extremely frustrating. And it's extremely frustrating to watch people who ripped him and wrecked his presidency now use George W. Bush and his statements as a tool to wield on behalf of an inherently ununifying agenda, disunifying agenda. You got Kamala Harris saying that she also believes in unity, and Jim Acosta saying he believes in unity. No, you don't. You're liars. You absolutely do not. I know you don't, because last summer, Kamala Harris was backing rioters. Last summer, Kamala Harris was tweeting out about how we could actually bail out rioters in Minneapolis. You remember her famous tweet on this, her infamous tweet on this, in which she tweeted out, if you're able to, chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. The people in jail were not protesters, they were rioters. But don't worry, she's not for uniformity, she's only for unity. Joe Biden is like, it was a great speech by it's time for us to come together. It's time for, last week, he was labeling the unvaccinated the worst among us. He never mind if they're, by the way, no exceptions for natural immunity, no exceptions for other health conditions. If you're unvaccinated, you're a bad person, according to Joe Biden, and he's going to lecture you about it. But he's for unity, you see.
My message to unvaccinated Americans is this. What more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see? We've made vaccinations free, safe, and convenient. The vaccine has FDA approval. Over 200 million Americans have gotten at least one shot. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us.
That's Captain Unity over there, right? The man who's bringing us all together, the person with whom George W. Bush is meeting across the table to talk about unity. You have the media. You have Jim Acosta, one of the most divisive media figures of the last several years, out there talking about how we can't even have unity. Why can't we have unity like we had in 9/11? We can't even have unity about masking. Right, because there are serious questions to be asked about the necessity of masking in a time when every American adult has the ability to go get vaccinated. Right, there are serious data questions to be asked about the efficacy of particular types of masks. And there are studies that demonstrate that cloth masks against the Delta variant are not particularly effective, for example. But according to Jim Acosta, if you don't do what he wants you to do, you are threatening unity. And this is the shtick of the left, and George W. Bush played right into it. The shtick of the left is that unity is offered by monopoly. And if you are a person who exists outside of the monopoly, then you have now created two poles, which means polarization. Polarization is a simple result, according to the left, of your failure to agree with them. Right? The same media who are decrying lack of unity on 9/11 spent most of 9/11 trying to jabber about how COVID was like 9/11. COVID is not like 9/11. I mean, it's certainly it's not like 9/11 in the sense that you guys won't even blame the people who are responsible, namely the Chinese government. But not only that, COVID's not like 9/11 because it's hit everywhere. It's a global pandemic. And yet the left kept saying over and over that it was like 9/11. The implication being that people who refuse to do what we want are like the terrorists. That is the implication. MSNBC, Chuck Todd, over the weekend compared 9/11 to COVID. This is not a comparison.
I guess the best way to look at the two battles that the country engaged in, we had an outside invader in Al-Qaeda, and so we were able to unite. We had a common enemy. With COVID, this invisible enemy, we're not able to do it. And, Willie, thinking about this all week, when you actually, sadly, you look at the arc of American history, polarization in some ways is more common than us coming together.
I mean, and then you get from Nicole Wallace that it's like 9/11 every couple of days COVID. No, it is not. It is like a health problem that is killing a lot of people. By the way, a health problem to which we have a solution, namely go get yourself vaccinated. And if you don't want to, then you bear the consequences of that. That's not like 9/11 in any way, shape, or form. That's like if on 9/11 you had the option to leave the building before. Okay, that is not the same thing at all. And also, it's as though the attackers on 9/11 had no actual will or agenda, because viruses don't. But here's Nicole Wallace making that absurd comparison. Again, the implication being that the people who refuse to go along with the agenda here are the ones who are leading to disunity.
I think there are so many parallels to how much more difficult it is to do any of the things that anyone who has spoken today has done, to call the country to a higher purpose. You've got politicians and prominent folks in the media outraged by steps that a president, not too many presidents after the one we heard from today, would try to save his country from an unthinkable death toll. I mean, as many people die every 2 days as died on September 11th in this country who don't have to die.
And yet there's no unity, no unity, no unity. Why isn't there unity? We all know why there's no unity. And it's because the basic principles that used to unite the United States have gone the way of the dodo bird. They were barely there even when Bush was president. In fact, many of them crumbled while Bush was president. And this is what's so frustrating, I think, to so many people on the right watching George W. Bush's speech and looking at many in the Republican establishment who seem to feel the same way as George W. Bush, that unity is just around the corner. If only I condemn this specific set of people, but not, broadly speaking, all people who commit these sorts of sins. Like that, it's playing right into the hands of people who actively use unity as a guise for a uniformity. And again, I do find it galling that George W. Bush apparently only emerges to critique the perspectives of people he purports to see as on the right. Right? Like that is particularly galling to me. Especially when you have the president of the United States who just destroyed George W. Bush's legacy in Afghanistan. Let's be frank about this. And George W. Bush went into Afghanistan with uniformity of purpose. There was uniformity. One member of Congress voted against it. Okay, everyone wanted to go into Afghanistan. Even Barack Obama in 2008 was calling it the good war in 2008. And Joe Biden decided to pull out and hand the country directly back to the Taliban. And then on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, he was talking about why he was right to do so and talking about and setting up these false binaries where, I mean, it's unbelievable. He's in places like Shanksville. He's meeting with first responders. And he's talking about how, we really have to be circumspect in how we fight al-Qaeda.
If you had told anybody that we were going to spend $300 million a day for 20 years to try to unite the country after we got bin Laden, after al-Qaeda was wiped out there, can al-Qaeda come back? Yeah, but guess what? It's already back other places. What's the strategy? Every place where al-Qaeda is, we're going to invade and have troops stay there? Come on.
Well, no, the strategy is everywhere al-Qaeda is, we're going to go in and we are going to kill them. I mean, I thought that was literally the point of the war on terror. The entire point of it. That any place they were using as a base to threaten the United States, we were going to go in and kill them. That was the basic idea of the war on terror. And so all of this leads to Trump, because Trump isn't having this, right? You want to know why Trump is durable in the Republican imagination? The reason Trump is durable in the Republican imagination is because Trump is not having any of this bullcrap, my way or the highway unity. He's not going to sit around and pretend that Joe Biden is a unifying figure. He's not going to make patty cake with the Obamas, who are highly polarizing figures in American political life. He is not going to sit around and pretend that Joe Biden is some sort of figure of great magnanimity who simply wants us all to come together. And so, while normally it is sort of considered uncouth on 9/11 to talk about the failures of an administration currently in power, it becomes a lot less uncouth when you have an entire administration that has directed itself to destroying the purpose of the American response to 9/11. So when Trump just doesn't operate inside the same sphere as the Republican establishment is still making nice and doing shoulder massages with the people who are using unity as a club. And Trump's like, I'm just not going to play that game. You wonder why he's popular at the Republican base still? That is the reason he is popular at the Republican base still. Now, he's not the only one who can do this. There are other people on the right who are doing this as well. You want to know why Ron DeSantis in Florida is popular at the Republican base? It's because he does this with regard to COVID in the media all the time. But the reason that Trump is popular with the Republican base is he is not going to pretend that he and Joe Biden are on the same page when it comes to things like Afghanistan. Like, it is somewhat mad. Again, it is maddening to me that Joe Biden, who spent years backing the Afghanistan campaign under George W. Bush, but then simultaneously undermined Bush at every available turn, 20 years later destroys what's going on in Afghanistan. By the way, everything going on with COVID, everything going on with the budget, it is all an attempt to distract from his failure in Afghanistan. That is what this is. It's why he's trying to ram it through. And Trump wasn't having any of that. So his presidential message, it's not presidential. Why couldn't he be presidential like Bush? Maybe because he's being realistic unlike Bush. Here was Trump yesterday.
It is also a sad time for the way our war on those that did such harm to our country ended last week. The loss of 13 great warriors and the many more who were wounded should never have happened. The leader of our country was made to look like a fool, and that can never be allowed to happen. It was caused by bad planning, incredible weakness, and leaders who truly didn't understand what was happening. This is the 20th year of this war and should have been a year of victory and honor and strength. Instead, Joe Biden and his inept administration surrendered in defeat.
Okay, not only is he not wrong, he is correct about what time it is, as they say. He is correct that we don't live in a world where unity of purpose is a thing. And anybody on the left or on the right who tells you that unity of purpose in America is still a thing is missing the game. They are missing the game that is being played. Okay, in Afghanistan right now, the Taliban started flying their flag over the presidential palace in Kabul on the day of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. The white banner with the Shahada, that's the testimony written across it, was raised at an 11 a.m. ceremony on Saturday to mark the beginning of the work for the Taliban's caretaker government. The Taliban did not issue a formal statement on the anniversary of the al-Qaeda terrorist attacks that preluded them being driven from power 20 years earlier, but the image of the flag was a stunning reminder, of course. Meanwhile, The Biden administration, it now turns out, on their way out of Afghanistan, remember they had this quote-unquote successful drone attack to go after the ISIS members who perpetrated that terror attack that killed 13 Americans? Well, it turns out that in all likelihood, according to the New York Times, they did, in fact, kill an Afghan translator and members of his family. That they had no idea who they were hitting. Is that unity? The Taliban are going around literally beating women in the streets. There's video of it emerging. Is that unity? Women are now in hiding all over Afghanistan. And we're supposed to pretend that unity is it's just under the surface. If only we could get at it, if only. And we're supposed to pretend that we don't know the reasons for the disunity. We know the reasons for the disunity. Don't gaslight the American people by telling them that we are all in favor of unity. You are not. You are not. The folks on the left, are on the hard left and in the Biden administration, are not in favor of unity. They don't want to explain what they're doing politically. They don't want to explain why their policies are right. They don't want to brook dissent. They want to use the powers of the federal government to ram through anything that they can without regard for the constitutional process. They want to do it in top-down fashion. They want to completely rewrite the American national bargain. And they want to castigate all of their opponents as inherently polarizing for things like, really, you're telling me I need to mask up my 5-year-old? The answer there is no, which is why, again, you want Trump, you're going to get more of him. This is how you're going to get more of Trump. We're in a battle for the culture and for our values. Like and subscribe to help keep our videos on the front line of the fight and top of your feed.